Hello and welcome to the LittleAutisticMe Podcast. My name is David and I am a late diagnosed autistic guy. Why Little Autistic Me? Well, I'm little, I am autistic and I am me. In this podcast I'll talk about my experiences as an autistic person. Other people's experiences and views may differ and are completely valid. Whether you are self-diagnosed or officially diagnosed, a friend or family member of an autistic person, or you just want to know more about what it's like being autistic, you are welcome here. Today I want to talk about what happened when I came to the realisation I am autistic. I knew that I had to seek diagnosis. Whilst I do believe that self-diagnosis is completely valid, for my own peace of mind, I felt that I needed to have it confirmed by a medical professional. I couldn't spend the rest of my life without knowing. I felt like I was already in some kind of limbo and I needed to know what was available for me, what help I could get and how to go about doing that. And without diagnosis as a starting point, that felt like an insurmountable hurdle. It took me a long time to arrange an appointment with my GP to discuss this. It always takes me a long time to make appointments for anything. I live in mortal fear that I might be wasting somebody's time. You know the old, there's always someone worse off than yourself, and what if they think I'm making it up nonsense. In the meantime, I spent large chunks of time obsessively researching autism, finding out everything I could and trying to work out whether what I was reading and hearing applied to me. I believe that this is a very common trait in autistic people. When we are interested in something, it becomes an all-consuming passion. We need to know everything that we possibly can about it and to try and get every piece of information that's out there. So when I finally plucked up the courage, I had to have a telephone appointment because of the whole COVID thing. We were in lockdown and you couldn't see a GP for love nor money. Now, I'm not great at making or receiving calls, so this was the first major stressor for me. The second was dealing with a GP who proceeded to tell me that there are 3 types of autism: high functioning, medium functioning, and, well, I couldn't listen anymore. Now, I'm quite new to the world of autism, and at that time I didn't know a hell of a lot about it, but I certainly knew that autism was no longer being discussed in terms of functioning labels. They don't acknowledge support needs, so those are now outdated, and when a GP starts talking to you like that, you kind of lose confidence in them. So yeah, I let her finish reading from whatever outdated article she had found in Google and didn't listen to much of it, and then asked her, so what now? How do I go about getting assessed? To which she replied, you have to contact Supporting Minds. Now, I think Supporting Minds is only a thing in Blackpool, and if you're not from Blackpool then you probably won't know what it is. It's a mental health charity. Now, I don't know the assessment system, but I know what Supporting Minds is. I've had dealings with them before, and I knew that they didn't deal with autism assessments, but I'd been told to call them, so I did, and spoke to them, and they told me what I thought already. They told me that they didn't do autism assessments, nor were they able to make referrals, but that they could provide support for autism-related health issues. But then they said something which was actually really helpful. They told me to contact my GP surgery again and ask for a referral to a single point of access. It turns out that this is the department who deal with referrals for autism and ADHD assessments. Here they refer you to the Blackpool Primary Intermediate Mental Health Team. So I contacted my GP's surgery and spoke to a receptionist and told them what Supporting Minds had said to me. And later that day, I was told that this information would be passed on to a GP who could deal with it. I actually started to become scared. I felt like I had committed an act of betrayal against a professional. Now that's kind of ridiculous because if you need help then obviously you need to figure out how to get it. So I kind of thought, well, if I pass this information on, then hopefully anybody else in the same situation as me won't have to go through the same rigmarole. Soon after this, I received a letter from someone in my GP's surgery, one of the GPs. He informed me that the referral had been made, and then sometime later, I can't remember how much, I received a letter from Single Point of Access informing me that an appointment had been made for me. This was a relief. It felt like somebody was actually taking me seriously. And along with the letter was a questionnaire which I was told to complete prior to receiving a telephone screener appointment. I answered all the questions truthfully, and at that point I think I started to realise how affected my life actually was, how much of a struggle everything had been. Evaluating in this level of detail and seeing it on paper was a bit of a shock. And a bit of a side note, the letter informed me that I had to return the questionnaire within 2 weeks or I would be removed from their lists and referred back to my GP. This is a bit of a problem for many autistic people. We tend to have issues when demands are placed on us, and I pointed this out to Single Point of Access, and the team member who I spoke to had told me that it wasn't actually a hard and fast rule. Now, in my opinion, this just shouldn't be said to begin with. People who are dealing with autistic people should know that that's going to be a problem and should maybe remove that from any correspondence. But back to the story. The appointment date arrived and I received a call from my autism diagnostician. She asked me a lot of questions. Some of them were really easy to answer because the answers were just so obvious. And some of them were much more difficult because I had trouble with the wording of the questions, and sometimes because it brought up very mixed emotions. Now, my poor diagnostician, she also struggled with the call. In her case, though, it was because she couldn't keep up with what I was saying. I tend to speak really quickly, and being a Scottish person living in England, there is a bit of a communication barrier sometimes. She had to type down everything that I was saying and she couldn't keep up. She repeatedly asked me to slow down. She noticed that I waffle when I am nervous. So after taking note of all of my answers, she asked me whether I would like my parents to be involved, but I told her no. I didn't think that my mum would remember much of my childhood, or that she maybe wouldn't want to acknowledge that there was anything wrong, in inverted commas, with one of her children. I didn't think that my mum would be ashamed, but perhaps just blinkered in that kind of like my children are perfect parents kind of way. It turns out that my mum did actually remember some stuff, but she just thought that that was just me being a child, just a bit different perhaps. But throughout the process, my mum was actually very supportive. She seemed a bit shocked that one of her children was autistic, but being that one of my nieces was diagnosed around about the same time, I think it was kind of expected. So anyway, following the screener call, I received a letter telling me that I was on the waiting list and I would hear from them in time. It took about a year in total from contacting my GP to having my assessment. Now this is a really short period of time compared to many people. Many people face sort of 2, 3, 4, even 5 years waiting, and I really wish that that time was consistently shortened for everybody. Nobody should have to wait that long for such an assessment. It is such a life-changing thing, and it is so nerve-wracking that just shouldn't be an issue. The assessment itself was the most bizarre thing. I couldn't see the point to most of it, and I found it really frustrating, but I complied and did what they told me to do in the way that I thought they wanted me to do it, and they dismissed me afterwards, telling me that they would be in touch. So within, I think, about a week, I received my report. The conclusion was that I am definitely autistic. I scored very high. I think it was close to the maximum number of points. This was both a surprise and not at the same time. After that, my emotions were all over the place, and they still are a bit. I felt shocked, wondering how I had managed to go for so long undiagnosed, especially as I had been diagnosed as suffering from depression, anxiety, dyslexia, bladder and bowel problems, random aches and pains, and so many other things throughout my life. There have been many diagnoses which, when combined, are strongly indicative of autism, but they were never picked up on because I think they were all diagnosed at various different times. I felt fear of what the rest of my life will be like. Where do I go from here? Is there any support available to help make life easier? And that is something that I am still waiting to find out. I felt grief for what my life could have been if I had support in place from a younger age. I still feel this. And related to the grief, I feel angry. I wonder, why did the education system not pick up on something? I've been to 2 schools, 3 colleges and university, and nobody noticed. And I find that pretty shocking. I also felt surprised that I'd never noticed before. Now, in my younger years, I was a youth worker. I worked with many autistic young people, and it never clicked that they were like me when I was younger. Now, though, I mostly feel relief. I am relieved that there is a reason for my life having been one long series of screw-ups, a reason for the constant exhaustion, the not being able to leave my home, a reason for all of the problems. I feel validated now that I know I wasn't just making it all up. And this is pretty much where I'm at now. It has been over a year since I was diagnosed. I am still waiting for word from support services and still trying to get accommodations put in place and still not really having a clue what I'm supposed to be doing with my life. In the next episode, I will be talking about my experiences of receiving support, or not as the case may be, and about getting accommodations put in place and the struggles that I have had with that. One, the most particular and shocking, was with the NHS, their lack of willingness to allow me to make appointments in a way that suit me. But that is all for the next episode, so thank you for listening as always. I hope you have either enjoyed this episode or found it useful, and please stay tuned for further content. Thank you for listening. I hope you have found this episode interesting or useful. If you have, please subscribe and stay tuned for the next episode.